Welcome everyone. Hello, and I apologize if I'm pausing intermittently. I've never worn my reading glasses with a mask simultaneously, because I usually wear my mask outside and not read outside. So this is going to be a little tricky, but we're happy to be here in the auditorium this afternoon. Welcome to the Board of Education, some of whom are accessing us remotely. And welcome to the administrators that are present with us. And before we begin, I would just like to have a brief moment of silence to honor the lives we lost on September 11, 2001, and to recognize Patriot Day. Thank you. It's good to be together. Some of you I haven't seen in person since March. For those of you watching remotely or viewing this recording, I want you to know that Board Trustees Allison Andrews, Jeremy Galland, and Jody Meyer are participating remotely, and we see them here on our screen, and we'll project out their questions or comments as they arise. This is a Board of Education work session. And as that, we will not be reviewing any business or having a period of public comment. Before describing the outline of the meeting, as a reminder to the public and to the employees, the Board of Education is an elected board of directors for the district. The board is a governing body responsible for establishing goals, setting policy, and overseeing resources for the district. The superintendent is the district's chief executive officer and administers the day-to-day operations of our schools. The Board of Education has not voted, nor are we voting on the operations of our schools. The operating plan submitted by the superintendent to the state on July 31st was reviewed by the board, but it was created by the superintendent with the collaboration of the Reentry Planning Committee. At board meetings, and in this work session today, we are listening to the superintendent's recommendations for reopening and can provide guidance as a governing body. Sometimes the board asks to hear specific information so that we can decide if the superintendent's recommendations are within our goals and within the capabilities of our human and financial resources. Valerie and the administrators have the deciding rights in this meeting. The board will weigh in and be consulted. Other representatives at this meeting, including union leaders, will be providing input for us. Today in our work session, we will plan to do two things. We will listen, and we will work through three questions. First, we will actively listen to the feedback from the district-wide and building-level faculty meetings regarding reopening and the goal to safely move toward providing in-person, on-campus learning as feasible. Then, after that feedback, we will work together through three main questions, which are, should the district, K through 12, stay within the existing calendar of operations from the August 19th community memo? Second, can we agree on prioritizing the phasing in of students on campus with the youngest students first? And then, when will the district be able to plot out the operational model for October? Participants have been given the opportunity to provide specific questions within those three topics, and we will bring them into the discussion after we hear the comments gathered by Valerie and the building leaders at faculty meetings. So I will pass the meeting over to Superintendent Dr. Henning Piedmont to frame the faculty and staff feedback from the district-wide and building-wide faculty meetings.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. I want to thank the building leaders who are here, Mr. Ada Pietro, Ms. Jennifer Spirelli, Ms. Amy Kazes. I want to thank the presidents and vice presidents of the 4 bargaining units who are present. I see Mr. Windall, Mr. Morgan, Theodore, all of you out there who are present. Thank you for coming. The reason that this meeting is so important is because you are representing the perspectives of faculty and staff who are in your buildings and who you know very well and you work very closely together. And what we would like to hear from you is basically the themes that emerge from your faculty meetings. You all had your faculty meetings this week, as well as any conclusions with regards to the major concerns among your faculty and staff. So I'd like to start starting with the high school and ending with the Hillside. Have the building leaders to first come up to the podium and share those perspectives and feedback and themes and concluding summary concerns. And then I'd also like for the leadership of the bargaining units to also share their thoughts, concerns, or worries as well, since it is an opportunity for us to hear from everyone who would have the most knowledge about what is happening and what will impact any decision about a change in the current schedule that we're following that was shared with the community. So what I would like to ask Lou to come on up. Thank you.
See if I can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to sort of address some of the concerns that are at the high school level. It is kind of weird having a 1 p.m. board meeting. I'm here 16 years, and I don't think I've ever had a board meeting in the middle of the day, so it is a little weird for me.
I'm sorry, Lou, you will need to use the microphone,
Okay,
because we
how's that?
do have people who are accessing this
Perfect.
through live Facebook.
I will do that.
So thank you so much.
Thanks, Valerie. So, thank you again. I know I was given 5 or 10 minutes to talk to you, but I don't think I need that much. But I think the main concern at the high school is primarily about safety. And I can tell you that from the perspective of every member of the high school faculty and staff, no one feels that remote learning is an ideal solution. I don't think anyone feels that that's an alternative to in-person instruction. And that was very, very clear at our faculty meeting. In addition to what happened at the faculty meeting, I also included in my notes to Valerie, many staff members felt that they were hesitant to articulate what they wanted to say verbally and wanted to memorialize their thoughts in writing, so I added an additional, I think it was 6 pages worth of concerns to the document. I hope you received those as well. But I will kind of summarize where we were. So the biggest concern was social distancing. And many of our staff members feel that we cannot adequately achieve a level of social distancing in the hybrid model, let alone the all-in model. Schools that have begun in-person instruction are already experiencing shutdowns and or delays. Okay. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'll use the mic anyway. As far as the masks are concerned, many felt that it was very difficult once students are in the building to really enforce the mask policy. Not so much in their classrooms, but when a student changes classes and is in the hallways, in the bathrooms, in common locations such as the high school lobby or the cafeteria. And that they felt that wearing these masks all day would be counterintuitive to good instruction. That students would be fatigued, staff would be fatigued as well. The main concern when we talked about social distancing was the fact that many of our high school students have been seen in our community not social distancing. I can tell you from experience in talking to our Hastings Police Department that pad parties are still happening on weekends, and many of our students are engaged in those activities. I can tell you that we've seen our students, whether they be at Amjo's, in town, at Draper Park, not wearing masks, not social distancing. So they felt that at the high school level, the main concern is that we're going to have students in our buildings who don't really practice social distancing, and that could bring the virus into our building. They were also concerned about the daily cleaning, more about in between periods. They felt that, we only have 3 or 4 minutes between a class period, even though we talked about staggering dismissal times and start times with our classes. There's still a concern that with our limited number of staff members in the custodial department that work so hard, that they wouldn't have the opportunity to be able to clean in an efficient manner. So that was a concern for them. And we spent a lot of time on talking about the science that was presented at the last Board of Ed meeting by several parents, many of who were physicians. Well, no one refutes the science that those individuals sort of quoted or referenced. It does not account for a group of energetic teenagers as opposed to docile patients. The environment is not a hospital environment. It's a school. No other public entity is fully open. Why are schools looked at to be the first? Barriers. When it comes to barriers, while they appreciate the fact that the district has done so much to bring in so much, that our buildings and grounds crew is working tirelessly to build barriers, that Maureen Caraballo has purchased endless amounts of PPE, and they were really, really appreciative of it. We've had a couple of classrooms that were set up with all of those barriers, and it really is a difficult situation. Very difficult to see. One of the reasons that was stated for bringing students in is the socialization piece. And with all of those barriers, socialization does not exist. There could not be collaboration. Students can't talk to one another by just leaning over. So the teachers felt it was counterproductive to a good teaching environment. Line of sight, we talked about the portable screens, the sneeze guards. Again, when you put too many in a row, the line of sight to the teacher and the teacher to the student is obstructed. At the high school, we talked about many of our rooms are small-sized rooms. With the hybrid model, we're struggling to put that number of students in those classes. With an all-in, it would be really, really difficult. That was the crux of the safety piece. And then there was a general anxiety, right? And what we talked about for about 15 minutes, both at our faculty meetings of this past week and our initial faculty meeting, which was 2 weeks ago, which was one that I called, we talked about this notion of district decisions being made as a district as opposed to decisions being made by school. Because everyone will agree the high school is completely different than the elementary school, which is completely different than the middle school. For what I've told you before as far as our kids with social distancing, I think the biggest risk for students, and our faculty has articulated this, is the high school has the biggest risk of bringing the virus in based on the fact that our students are not practicing the social distancing piece. Part one. Part two is we also have an advantage at the high school in that our students have been on Google Classroom, Zoom, Google Meet for many years. They are self-sufficient, do not require childcare, so they felt that the decision to reopen the high school should be made last as opposed to be made in conjunction with the elementary school or the middle school. So they wanted me to express to the board and to Valerie that we take each school individually, or even each grade individually, and make decisions based on those factors. And that while remote learning is not ideal, in no way, and Valerie will tell you it's been a tough couple of days, the last couple of days. Right now it's the safest option at the high school level. And we feel we can make it work, at least for several more weeks. And the priority should be looking at the lower grades and see if we can get our lower children who I can't even imagine as a high school principal, and I know nothing about elementary school. I can't even imagine a kindergartner being on Zoom all day. And I don't even know what that looks like. So that's the feedback from the high school. The high school, I just want to plug my high school staff. They've been working really, really hard, and the results have shown we've gotten really good positive feedback, and they want to make it work. They know they need to make it work, and they're ready to accept kids if that's what the decision is. They just feel they want to be part of that decision. So thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Lou, how many coverages have you had to make as a result of any faculty or staff member who is exercising the CARES Act provision?
Well, we have right now we have two faculty members who are on child care leaves, and they're full-time teachers, and we have one teacher who is on a sick leave for an injury. So we've had to cover 2 full-time teachers, and we've done that by really from borrowing from Peter and paying Paul, in that we've moved some AIS classes, we've paid some individuals a little extra to teach a 6th class, but there are other teachers that are on the radar to take a leave should we go in and their children are still home. So it could be an issue moving down the road.
What about retirements?
We've had one retirement who was going to retire full-time but decided to help us out and only retired full-time and came back as a .4 to teach our super English class. Yeah, we've had one retirement since day one.
And that was not a retirement that was planned?
Not planned at all. As I said, people are nervous, and understandably so. And I can tell you, I'm going to speak for myself as the high school principal, and as Lou Pietro, the human being. I'm a type 2 diabetic. I am also nervous, but I know what my responsibilities are, and I also have the luxury of having an office where I can escape when I need to, and when the nerves get the best of me. Many of our staff members don't have that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Jennifer Spirelli?
Yes, I've just been informed from our district clerk that if you're attempting to view this, to go on the Zoom feed that was distributed, not the Facebook Live.
Good afternoon, board. Nice to see you all in person. Happy to be here with you face to face, and I appreciate the time that we're taking today to review our faculty's concerns and comments. So we met on Wednesday at 3:15, and prior to Wednesday we had a survey that went out. The survey was voluntary, so if people wanted to have those 2 different venues of opportunities to share their concerns, anonymously written in the survey or in our faculty meeting. I think Lou did a wonderful job of echoing the concerns and feelings of the middle school staff, but I still do want to highlight some of the big takeaways from the survey as well as from the faculty meeting. In that survey, it turned out that although not ideal for our faculty and staff, 89% of the individuals that responded to that survey stated that they are more comfortable with remote learning. So that 20% of them are only concerned with safety in the learning remotely, meaning that these past few days coming into the building, they have felt rather safe, and only 20% of the staff are concerned about learning remotely for their own safety. And I think that is attributed to a lot of the prep work from the custodial staff that happened this summer with building the barriers, our signage, our mandatory mask wearing, and our PPE, so them using the technology. So safety in the remote learning environment for our staff, for overall feel comfortable. What the concerns are more for the all-in model is that we're rushing the decision. The FMS staff feel that we don't have to be the first ones in the district to open as an all-in. They'd rather do it slowly, and wait until other districts maybe do all-in and learn from their mistakes. They're kind of saying, why us? Why do we need to be the first ones to do that? The thoughts too were that if we were to do a phase-in, all-in, that they would really like to do it with one grade at a time for a week or even 2 weeks, and test and see, experience the hallways and the classrooms with one grade for a week or even 2 weeks, and problem solve any of the problems that we come up. And we can do that much more effectively and efficiently if we did a slower phase-in. So that was a real strong vocal comment from the group. Another strong vocal comment from the group too is frankly regarding weather. And if we're all in and we don't have lockers, there are students that are going to be coming in with backpacks and coats, and that's a lot of stuff to have in a classroom, and in addition they're going to be carrying the barriers. So how to manage 26 students with coats, backpacks, barriers, and computers in your classroom safely is just a tall order of responsibility, and the staff are just feeling a little overwhelmed with that in the all-in model. Ideas about the barriers being in the aisles of the rows of desks is a great idea, commented about being on paper, because it will help with transmissions, just how we have barriers around us and the standing teacher barriers. And they're really appreciative of the idea, but they're concerned also about safety. We already did have one incident where a teacher tripped over the leg of a standing barrier and rolls her ankle a little bit. So just the idea, now you have 26 students in the classroom, and there's more barriers than there already are now, which is great in theory and on paper for our safety, but it raises another concern about movement and entering and exit and fire safety. So that was a concern as well. With 26 students in a classroom in an all-in model, there won't be any 6-foot social distancing, and that's just mathematically impossible, and we realize that, so there's just that added concern. So just not being able to find the right balance between barriers and social distancing adds to that, their concerns. Something that I think sets FMS apart from the other buildings is that we have about 9 transitions, if you're including the entry and exit, but throughout the day. Because we're in a 40-minute schedule, 40-minute class periods, we do have a lot of movement throughout the building. And the high school is in their block schedule, so those are 80-minute periods, which cause less movement throughout the building than the middle school. And of course, Hillside is cohorted, which also allows for less movement. So FMS being the middle school, we are a little unique in that, and that is a concern. We're managing many more transitions, many more rotations throughout the rooms. Students, a classroom on average has 6 different groups of students in the room on a single day. So that's 6 different groups of students in and out of that room on average in a single classroom. And that's a concern. And then in addition, because we have shared staff and ICT classes, teachers, many teachers are in 3 different rooms themselves in a single day. So that's another added concern. A lot of rotation, sharing of computers, sharing of webcams. Thank you to the technology staff that very quickly rushed to order and got every teacher a headset, so that did help lower those anxieties, because you don't want to share headsets. So teachers are moving from room to room with their own headset, but you're still sharing the computer space. So that did come up as a concern. And another concern really was under the umbrella of just ventilation and air circulation. And again, credit to the custodial staff and facilities really working very hard, and they knew that there was upgrades made this summer and upgrades still continuing to be made. But comments just that this was an old building, and how could all of these upgrades really bring our ventilation and air circulation up to standard? So just a lack of confidence in that. And really more, the last category was around students and themselves. Middle schoolers are unique individuals, and we love them for that, but managing them and having them get into that habit of wearing masks all day is going to be a challenge. And just to echo also what Lou said, many of our staff members are in town and been around town and have seen our students outside not social distancing and not wearing masks. So that has added to their own anxiety and concerns. And I'll just kind of end with a single quote from one of our teachers, that there isn't any room for error here. So there are too many variables. We can't make any mistakes. Thank you.
And one question,
Sure.
Jennifer. How many leaves do you have, and could you just talk about the experience you've had to cover those?
Absolutely. Thank you, Valerie. Right now we have 4 full-time leaves. It's been tough. The discipline areas to fill them are challenging areas to fill, and to be honest, there's not many candidates out there. So filling those 4-time leaves have been very, very stressful, and we want the best teachers for our students, even if it's a leave replacement. So one of the disciplines, the post has been up for 2 days now, and we haven't had any applicants apply. So that's a big concern. And then we also have 2 part-time leaves. So that is, some of the days that they're in the building, some of the days that they're out of the building, and that's for childcare issues. So that's, I think, a little confusing for students too, but I mean, I respect the needs for the leaves, but just trying to fill them and make consistency for our students is important to us. So yes, some of the leave came very last minute too, so we're working through that to really speed up filling them with the most qualified teacher we can.
Thank you very much. And just as to further clarify the last point you made, so the last minute part of it, I mean, as you know, it could be because someone didn't feel well and had to go home. And if it is determined by their physician that they can't come back, the building leadership team has to fill that, and that could be anywhere between 10 to 14 days. So it's not to say that we're getting anything late, from any of our teachers or faculty. That's not happening.
Yeah, thank you.
What's happening is if if someone is not well, they're sent to our nurse makes a determination, and that determination, based upon, that conversation that the faculty or staff member has with their own medical provider could easily end up with, a coverage that's 10 to 14 days. And as Jennifer explained, most of our faculty and staff use the same locations. So you could have 2 or 3 other people in that same location that then also may need that 10 to 14 days.
Yeah. And thank you, Valerie, too. While you were speaking, I actually just added up. We actually have 5 full-term leaves and 2 part-time leaves. And in addition, that doesn't count our daily absences for whatever reasons, too. But you're absolutely right that it's not to anyone's fault that the last minute, it wasn't like they purposely did it to us. It was just the circumstances, and we respect and understand, and I want the health and safety of our teachers to be at the forefront, but just trying to make sure that our students are still getting the education that they deserve and filling those spots. And again, credit to our substitute teachers really stepping up too to try to help, and to the other teachers that have been working very much over their allotted time to prep lessons for other classes. So really stepping in as a department, and I really am indebted to how much they've been helping out within the department to supply engaging lessons for other classes that they don't even teach.
Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amy Casey.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me here today to represent Hillside. We are very fortunate to be able to have a fabulous team at Hillside, and this team has been working tirelessly, as you know, to be able to deliver the best possible instructional experience for our children. That being said, we are coming into many, many obstacles. First, I've divided our teacher comments into sections, and the first section I'd like to share with you is around kindergarten. Our kindergarten teachers all spoke, in our session because our kindergarten teachers are feeling very, very passionately about what is best for our children. One kindergarten teacher shared, "Kindergarten all out is impossible. Our children really need to be in the classroom." Another teacher described it as painful, trying to sustain energy and attention. The kindergarten teachers also shared that our children cannot be in front of this screen all day. For kindergarten children, we know it is not best for them. And that they cannot last the full day, even that it is just not feasible. Now, the difference with kindergarten over every other grade level right now is that our kindergarten children are in smaller classes, and that is because this summer the Board of Education decided to open up another section. So that 6th section of kindergarten has allowed all of our classes to be between 16 and 18 students. For that reason, low class size, and also our kindergarten classrooms are larger, it gives us more space to spread out. For that reason, our kindergarten teachers feel very strongly that bringing students back to school is absolutely necessary. When we think about the school in its entirety, one big obstacle right now are the barriers. When we think about what the guidance outlines for us, the guidance says social distancing or barriers. When we look at the barriers that are in our classrooms, and I know that you all had the opportunity to take a walk with me in the school, what you saw was a picture. Well, you didn't see a picture, you actually saw the real thing. The barriers are clear in the front, but they're white on the sides. Because of that, it really blocks the view of children to be able to see not only their neighbors, but even the smart board, the teacher. It makes it very, very difficult. There are barriers that are all clear that would really serve our students better instructionally because they wouldn't block their view. So that's an obstacle that we are recognizing. Another obstacle that we have is that many of our teachers are working in their classrooms with tables. We've moved to a more collaborative model, so our tables are representative of what we believe for instruction for young learners. We believe that it should be collaborative, that students should have the opportunity to talk and be a part of their learning. It should be child-centered. However, these tables are certainly obstacles for us when we're talking about social distancing, and it makes it very difficult for students to be placed 6 feet apart. And even if they are placed closer with barriers, the barriers are now going in all different directions. So the guidance tells us that we should all be facing the same direction in the classroom. Tables really prevent that. So our teachers are asking that if we are going to be bringing students in, that they have desks, so at least the children can be at their own seats. Another concern from our staff is around the scientific evidence that the barriers could actually mitigate the spread of airborne illness. And we talked about the idea of, if there's a person in a classroom that peels an orange, that orange can be smelled across the classroom. So does a barrier do enough to be able to prevent that spread of germs? Moving on to our safety category, it was brought up by our teachers. There was concern around the masks that are provided. Our masks are cloth masks, much like the one I'm wearing, but there was concern that they're not disposable. They would like to see also more disposable masks being offered for both staff and students. As I shared with you already, there's a concern around the room size and number of students. So whereas our kindergarten teachers felt that based on their room size and their low number of students in their classes, they could do an all-in model, our grades 1 through 4 had significant concern around that, and around the fact that if all students were in the classroom, the size of the classroom, the actual square footage, would not allow for social distancing. There was also concern from our teachers around testing and the fact that we do not get to test. So the health screener relies upon parents to be able to answer those questions. And what we know about young children is that very often young children have a sniffle, have a bellyache, and very often we as parents send our children to school, and now we're really relying on parents to be able to make a very honest decision. And that is a concern of our staff. Another concern of our staff has to do with the outside time. We are planning to be able to get our children out as much as possible. However, the possible is the key word. Our PE and our music classes will need to take place outside. So our PE classes would be on the front field, but that means that's about 60 students on the front field, 12 feet apart. So that really limits the space as far as others' classes being able to get out there. In the back, on our back playground, we have the music teachers scheduled to be out there, but again, it's 2 music classes. So again, if the children are singing, it's 12 feet apart. So again, that limits the amount of space we have for other classes to get outside, just for mass breaks or for lessons. Of course, we do have a beautiful new outdoor classroom, thanks to our PTSA, and we've already created a schedule that will be shared so that teachers can sign up for that. There was a concern that was raised in regard to student mask wearing. We are concerned about the fact that it will be a very long day for children to be wearing masks. The teaching assistants and aides and monitors were our essential workers of our child care in the spring, and they shared that it was very difficult for the students to leave the masks on, and we anticipate that having students in school for over 6 hours could be a very challenging thing for us. We are also talking about having lunch outside as often as possible. There's been a lot of concern raised about having students in classrooms eating lunch, so our plan is to have them outside. But again, outside means that we have to socially distance them. We don't have enough tables. We need to get more tables to be able to do that. And even as far as the location, both our outdoor space in the front and our outdoor space in the back are used for instruction. I did reach out to both our police and fire safety people in our community to find out about where I could put tables. We can't have them in the circle or on the sidewalk. That would prevent us from being able to access the school building, so that becomes another obstacle. We have teachers that shared just sheerly, I don't feel comfortable being in a small space with students. So when we think about our related service providers, many of the rooms that these providers have are much smaller than a typical classroom. There's also been concern noted around the cleaning. Though our custodial team and our buildings and grounds team, led by Joe Martirana, has been phenomenal in everything that they have done, there are concerns that are just about the physical building. For example, in the bathrooms upstairs, there's concern that the faucets are too close to the actual sink, so kids don't get a good washing of their hands. So that's a concern of our staff. Also the ventilation, as was mentioned before by my colleagues. One teacher shared, I want concrete answers. I don't want, we will see what happens. There's concern around special areas working across multiple classrooms and being pollinators. There is concern, and it's interesting, today is 9/11, and one of our staff members shared that on 9/11, when everybody came to help, they were told that they would be fine. And now here we are 20 years later and they're not fine. And teachers felt that that is concerning, that we just don't have an assurance that we will be fine. They also shared that more states have been added to the New York quarantine list, and they're creeping up on this side of the coast. And another member shared, I wouldn't feel comfortable walking into a room with 20 children and staff members right now. Now, that being said, I think it's very important to recognize that all of our Hillside staff members recognize good pedagogy. And every single staff member recognizes that it's better for children to be in person. That being said, what was brought up is the idea that that is different than the safety piece. So it's almost 2 different conversations. One is about pedagogy and the other is about safety in COVID. And we need to recognize those as 2 different pieces. There is a concern about the hybrid model. The hybrid model that is currently outlined is of concern to our staff because of the live stream. The live stream will not allow for interaction with the classroom teacher. It will only allow for interaction with the teaching assistant. And there is significant concern from our team about that. As good as the remote learning has been, and there have been challenges with remote learning, but teachers are very concerned that our families are going to be very disappointed when they see the live stream, because it will limit the interaction with the teacher, and again, the teaching assistant will be supporting many children on the grade level. Teachers feel that there is many challenges. There are many challenges for the all-in model. And there's a lot of anxiety because of the number of changes that we've had. There's also concern about the fact that children are not used to sitting at a desk all day, and the idea that if we did all in, there would be no room for students to move around in the classroom because every single spot would be taken. So that being said, I know I've just shared with you a lot of concerns from Hillside. I also want you to know that our team at Hillside has been working on this challenge of COVID from the very beginning. I put out an email in the spring to our team to say that we needed to create a reentry team, and this would be purely voluntary. I had 20 different staff members reach out to say that they would volunteer, and I want to recognize this team for meeting with me multiple times a week, 7:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock at night, because this team is truly committed to being able to find solutions. One of the giant challenges that we have had is the fact that our guidance from the state has been challenging for us, and it has caused a lot of constraints on us. I actually brought with me, and I want to read it to you, this small piece that's really making it very difficult for us. And this is what it said. It's on the social distancing piece. It's on page 2 of the Department of Health document that is labeled interim guidance. And it says, for social distancing, responsible parties must maintain protocols and procedures for students, faculty, and staff to ensure appropriate social distancing to protect against the transmission of the COVID-19 virus when on school grounds and in school facilities. Here's the important part. Specifically, appropriate social distancing means 6 feet of space in all directions between individuals or use of appropriate physical barriers between individuals. This guidance is what limits us. And the reason for this is because we know that if we have an all-in model, we have 20 children in a classroom, that we will not be able to social distance. And then we must rely on the barriers, and the barriers are just not conducive to learning. And that is where our problem lies. That being said, at Hillside and with the reentry committee that has worked district-wide, there have been solutions, and the solutions that have been proposed are all good and possible solutions. There have been obstacles for each one, but we at Hillside don't believe that those obstacles are reasons that we still can't consider them. So one of the solutions that had come up early on, and I know Dr. Henning-Piedmont had shared this out with the community, was the AM-PM model. The idea of bringing students in for a half day. This gets all students in every day. Now the obstacles around that model, one obstacle was the cleaning. But since that time, the cleaning procedures have changed, and the chemicals or the tools they're using to be able to clean are able to clean faster. As a result, I've spoken with Joe Martirana, and he believes that in the amount of time that we would do a shift, we would be able to clean properly all the spaces. The other obstacle for the AM-PM model is busing, and that is a significant obstacle that we have not solved yet. But it's not an obstacle that we can't solve as a community. So I'd like to just put that out there as an opportunity. Our teachers, all of our teachers, K-4, felt very strongly that they want to see their children every day. And if there is a way that we can make that happen with a model such as the AM-PM model, our teachers would be very open to that. The other model that was proposed by our reentry committee was the K-6 model. Again, the idea of spreading out our students, so it's not having 20 or 20 plus children in a classroom, but instead we're using multiple spaces, potentially spaces at other buildings. The challenge with that model was that it was an equity issue, that we wanted to get all of our kids in. But what we know is that K-12, and as my colleagues have shared, it's not the same. The elementary children need to see their teachers. They need to be in the school environment. So these are other solutions that are possibilities. The third solution that our reentry committee had mentioned was the idea of a remote teacher, where there's actually somebody who is in charge of the remote teaching, somebody who's teaching and interacting with our children that are home, because we are extremely concerned about the live stream. Again, there was an obstacle, and the obstacle was money. We didn't have enough money to be able to hire more teachers to do this job. So I want all of you to know, and our community to know, that it's not a matter of us not wanting our children all in. We want nothing more than having our children all in, but we've got to be creative in order to figure out the way to get them all in, and to get them all in while also meeting the guidance that has been laid out for us by the Department of Health. Thank you.
And Amy, could you speak to the number of leave replacements and the degree to which you're able to cover those, and the amount of time you have to spend to cover those?
Sure. We have 2 leave replacements that were based on maternity. So those leave replacements were anticipated. Since then, we've had 3 more that are new leave replacements that we need to find people for. So we are concerned about who we are going to find. As Jen had shared, it's difficult right now. So we will be posting for those positions and following the protocols in place by the district.
And in the meantime, who will teach those? I mean, how are you managing those?
So right now, we're going to be using our building substitutes, but we only have 2 building substitutes, so we're going to have to be creative. Luckily, they're not all starting immediately, so we have, a week or 2, but we've been in conversation with Lynn Walker and personnel because this is a great challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll hear from the Hastings Teachers Association. I think that's you, Nate.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for including us in this discussion. I want to take a second, as I do what seems to be almost at every meeting now, is thank Joe Moderano and his staff, his maintenance staff, for the amount of work they've done to see them in the past week installing a new filtration system at Hillside, to putting in safety barriers and trying to completely readjust our entire educational community has been amazing. I also want to commend the principals who just spoke for so accurately addressing the concerns of the teachers in Hastings. Everything they talked about is what I would reiterate as well. There's challenges with every hybrid model. There is no perfect hybrid model. Everyone has a list of problems that follow behind it. There is no perfect model of all in a coronavirus outbreak. Everything has a list of problems behind it. There is no perfect virtual solution. In the coronavirus world, everything has a list of problems behind it. Instead of going into those, I just have a couple of questions that I want to challenge the board with, and I don't expect the answer now, and nor should you give it to me now. And the main question I think that is at the core of what is going on is, can the district say with a reasonable level of certainty that the safety measures that are being taken, can they provide or prevent and even contain the spread of coronavirus in the event of an outbreak, especially a potential asymptomatic outbreak? Because when I think about the risk of what's going on, it is not simply the risk of the coronavirus outbreak. The risk really is potential long-term health issues in children and adults and potential death. How will the district assess that risk, and how will it measure whether the all-in model is worth that risk? And those, I think, are the real questions that are really at the heart of what's going on. We know teachers want to be with their students. Teachers want to be able to give the best possible educational model to their students. The issue right now really is safety. And with that, I'll conclude my comments. Thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you, Nate. How much time have you spent processing leaves or questions about leaves, just approximately? I know.
I couldn't even quantify it. It has been immeasurable and exhausting how much time I've spent on issues of teachers returning and the working conditions that we are going to be working under since basically May.
Thank you. Luetta Pietro, President of the Hastings Administrators Association.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was going to speak again, but on behalf of the administrators, I think you can hear in our voice that we're trying to get it right, and we're going to do everything we can to try to get it right and support our students and staff first and foremost. You know, we're working hard, and we really want the board to know that while we have our own concerns and we have issues in our own personal lives that make us nervous, like I shared with you earlier, that we're here and committed to doing what's right for the district. When decisions are made, we'd love to be included in those decisions so that we can roll them out and be part of those discussions as we are here today, because ultimately we are the ones who are going to be responsible in each one of those buildings to ensure the safety of our staff and our students, most importantly. So I appreciate the time that the board has given us to articulate our concerns. Thanks.
Thank you, Lou. Carlos, for the Civil Service Employees Association custodial.
Good afternoon, everybody. We support whatever make a decision with all the custodia we ready for it. Whatever you decision they're making, that's the only I can say. All the custodian support whatever decision you guys making. Okay, thank you.
And a question for you, Carlos. How many times have you moved furniture in and out of classrooms?
Say again.
How many times have you moved furniture in and out of classrooms? You lost count?
I am. Yes, I do. I did a couple of times. Yeah, especially some classroom, special classroom. Yeah, I did. I lose. Okay.
Thank you. Patrick, on behalf of Patrick and Nancy of the Civil Service Employees Association for Clerical.
Good afternoon. Also, like many of the other unions, we have concerns just as much as anybody else. We had concerns when the pandemic first happened, and we had the child care program. And so what we would like to tell you as a union, we're here for the children and for the administrators, and we want to be able to support you in any way we can. And we are, the word I've chosen, being adaptable to whatever situation will arise. So thank you.
And I think that's a fairly significant point that the monitors, our teacher aides and teacher assistants were here after March, and they worked in the child care program. So the child care program that we ran, that other districts as well ran, and that was for our first responders and our medical professionals. So they were present, in the district and in the building. So that's, I think that, that point can't be lost on all of that, because, that it was part of the governor's order. And I know that Maureen, you, and others worked really closely. Go ahead, Maureen.
No, I just wanted to also acknowledge the clerical and the nurses.
Yes,
because the nurses actually had to work quite a bit during that time, because we have so few nurses, and it was required for them to work like 7 to 6 every day in that condition.
So that was sort of like a training for right now. We are ready for whatever turn that we take, whether it's the hybrid model, all-in model, or remote model. We just want to support the children of Hastings as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Anything else to add, Maureen?
Oh, no, I was just thinking I just wanted to acknowledge also the technology staff and actually Patrick, who the entire time assisted in the distribution of lunches every day for our children, and our cafeteria staff as well.
Absolutely. And Tony's in the back. Tony? Yeah. Tony is is the technical team, and he's in many different places in the district, managing lots of device distribution. Not only that, but ensuring that the technology does in fact work in the district, in troubleshooting, and spending lots and lots of time doing that. So
what I definitely can say about the technology component, similar to that you was asking Carlos, this technology has been like a roller coaster, but again, also taking whatever is needed by the district, whether it's the implementation of the webcams, the headsets, whatever we need to be able to provide education, whether remotely or in. So Tony's been indispensable. Getting Chromebooks out to parents, so everybody has access to technology. I believe we've just received hotspots just in case, so we're trying to keep on top in the tech. I'm speaking from technology angle right now, trying to keep on top as much as we can with the resources that we have.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to represent anything that may not have been represented? Drew, do you have anything to add about Section 1?
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Right now, Section 1 is allowing some of the low and high, the medium risk sports to start November 29th. I'm confident that once the section gets together, we'll come up with the best, safest plan for our student athletes and our coaches and the community. I'm just thrilled that I have a great health office, maintenance group, coaches, staff, and student athletes that will make it work. If we get the green light, we'll make sure it's safe for everyone to participate.
Thank you, Drew.
Thank you, Valerie, for coordinating and inviting all of the administrators and union leaders to provide their points of view and to provide the feedback from our discussion that began on September 1st at our board meeting regarding the rephasing in of potentially students into our buildings. So the discussion now that we've listened to various aspects of feedback from that is to move forward with the questions that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, and the first of which is concerning the current calendar that we have and the models in that calendar up through October 2nd. So Valerie, if you want to speak to that calendar and any thoughts that you'd like to share out to the board, and if the board has questions based on what Valerie's thoughts are on that calendar, we should proceed from there.
Sure. Thank you so much, Lauren. And thank you again to everyone here, the union representatives and our administrators for coming and sharing your feedback and your thoughts. They're very valuable and matter significantly in what we are, what's ahead of us in terms of this, the remainder of the days from September 8th to October 2nd. And I hope all of you had a great beginning. I heard many wonderful things about what's taking place, and you should be very proud of all the work that you have, on behalf of your units and all the members of your units. We are tremendously grateful for all of the work that you've been doing and all the efforts that have been underway to ensure that we were open and could open on September 8th. And as I said, there have been tremendous outpourings of gratitude from our community and from our parents. And that's because of your professionalism and your dedication to all the children and the families of Hastings. So thank you so much.
I think there's some issues with the audio. The other board members online are saying they can't hear.
Valerie, is yours unmuted on your actual computer for the Google Meet?
Oh, I don't have it on. Okay, so that's right.
I can move this over there.
Yeah, let's do that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, is that better? Okay. So, and I appreciate the notes that the administrators provided, and our Board of Education has reviewed those notes. I don't think that there's anything that's been said that would suggest that we should stray away from the current calendar. So the draft or the calendar that was prepared and shared in August that indicates the plan for the number of weeks that we are in remote, which would be this week and next week. That should continue, and the remainder of the school, the month of September should continue. So I would recommend that we stay the course with that schedule on the basis of the feedback that we received about the realities. But on top of that, and there was a reason why I was asking each leader and union member what the impact was on the workforce. there's a tremendous impact on the workforce. So this is day 4 of the beginning of the school year. It doesn't take much to wipe out the workforce. And what I mean by just the workforce not being present, because all it requires is one person who may have, may become ill and then goes to their physician and then, may need to be tested. And even if the test is negative, you can't come back right away. So there's a whole protocol that has to be followed, and we actually experiencing that this week, where if that happens for one individual, and that individual may not, that individual may be in the same area that other individual was in, and then that requires that person to also have to go into that cycle, and that can really cause significant disruption in the course of the day. And the administrators have to figure this out, and they've not really represented how much time they spent on this, and I mean both the principal and the assistant principal, to try to figure this out. And when you don't have sufficient or additional substitutes to have to cover those classes, so so much so that there's certain things that they're not able to do that they were planning to do because they've had to really manage this.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
So if someone, because I think maybe that's something we'll talk about today a bit more. Hold on, let me unmute so the guys at home can hear. So just to clarify one thing you said, someone gets ill, goes home, is tested, comes negative, they still can't come back. Is that just, you mean because they're sick?
No, it means that's the protocol, because
Yeah, so can you just say a little bit more, because I think maybe some board members don't know that, and maybe some people listening on the feed don't know. That maybe sounds like a pretty important.
Sure. And actually, I'm sending out the instructions to families on how to use the COVID-19 health screener, and I do reference those pages. So I'm in our school reopening plan. I'm on page 20, which starts the whole process of returning to school. So an individual can test negative, and it still doesn't mean that they are cleared to return. And we have these return to school protocols. These are items 1 through 5 on pages 21 to 22. So someone can test negative, be exposed, 2 days before, test negative, still doesn't mean that they're able to return. They have to wait it out for that between 10 to 14 days, so that span of time. And then, depending on the situation, the healthcare provider has to clear them for return. So it's a pretty significant process, and I do detail some of this in the instructions that parents are going to receive about how to complete the health screener, because they do need to know that. And the only reason that it's something that I know about is because it's happening. And we've only been in school for 4 days. So this is pretty significant, in terms of, I think an indicator of how we need to really look, very closely at what we do. And this information will become even more important. And in a conversation today with some of my colleagues who have had some of the same situations, in one district, the entire central office was quarantined. And it related to a meeting that they were holding where someone tested positive, and that led to the health department, which intervened. And that's something the superintendents have been asking for, is really clear guidance from the Westchester Department of Health. And it was the Westchester Department of Health that did place them on quarantine. So they do have, authority to do that, and that was the Westchester Health Department who release them from quarantine. So I think that's something that, and as I said, that was just something that was part of the conversation yesterday and today. And the Westchester Health Department is intervening a bit more directly than was previously, than they had previously been involved. So superintendents will be working with the Westchester Health Department along with their medical director to make sure that, after contact tracing, because that's really what's key in terms of determining where an individual's been, who else has been in, where, what other spaces and those other individuals that have been involved. So I think that is something that, we have really experienced pretty directly in these last few days. And I know the efforts of, the administrators, and it's pretty draining, to try to, find people who are, we believe are, able to go in and support our children and educate them well. It's also a challenge with regards to teachers who do assume those additional responsibilities. I do worry about them picking up, a seventh or, additional responsibilities as well. And for some, they need some time to sort of catch up on being able to teach what they're teaching. So sometimes it's not sort of an easy match. So I do very much want to make sure that that's on the record as being a critical factor that we're living right now, and and this is only week one. The other sort of situation has to do with, as I mentioned, everyone has protections under the CARES Act, and in doing so, I just want to make sure that it's understood that any the individuals who are taking those leaves are similar to any other family member that if you don't have child care, you have to stay home. If you don't have anyone to take care of your children, you have to stay home. If you're worried about someone, your elderly parents, your 90-year-old, 95-year-old parents, you're very worried about bringing a highly contagious disease home. So I just wanted to put that forth as a sort of personal reality that we're all hearing as we process the various ways in which people are trying to obviously work and be professional, but also be very, very concerned about their families and what the impact will be if they brought something home that unfortunately would put the rest of their family in peril. I do think, though, as I've heard, and this has been a reoccurrent theme with regards to elementary school. So I do think that, the one recommendation that I would make with regards to, points that Amy's made is that, the Hillside does need to look at, how they can bring back certain students, like what grade level would that be? And it would have to be the entire building, processing that and thinking that through. Because I do think it's, kindergartner is very different from any other grade and doesn't have the independence that any other, it's a very unique age and characteristics that would be, we'd be challenged by. And just keep in mind, the kindergartners who were in the remote environment in March had been with their teachers for a good, 5-6 months. So it's a very different experience than, starting the school year being in a remote model. So that would be my recommendation. So stick with the existing schedule that we have, and we would do what we've been doing all along. We get new information and new updates, and we process that and share that, and we have been making adjustments along the way, and I think we should continue to look at that and process how we can not only eventually, whenever that time may occur, bring all children back, but most importantly, we have to make sure that the 100% remote model works in terms of what we have in our remote learning plan, as well as what we've been planning for and leading up to, which is the start of the hybrid model, which is on September 21st. And again, continuously look at those, the way in which instruction is provided, what our teachers need, what they're saying. I will be sending out invitations to our faculty and staff to participate in a faculty meeting every other week. So again, I'm hearing directly, and I know that our building leadership team is doing the same. And then we bring that back and share that with the board trustees so that you're hearing, regularly what is happening and how we're going through each week and with new information and updated information. I don't think it's a small thing that we are hearing that students are going to the woods and partying. That closed Pelham. That's why they had a plan to open. And when they learned that children were in the woods having, they were not socially distancing, they were engaging in reckless behavior, it could be a tremendous detriment, to everyone in a school. So that's, really, as I said, it's just timely that that would happen, but it's a consideration in terms of how we think about, what we're doing, and that as much as we are we're trying to be faithful to our school reopening plan, there are other factors that are, that are operating that, certainly could undermine, all the kinds of things that we're trying to do to ensure that eventually we get all children back into school. But we should, continue the pace that we've established and continue to explore and study and get new information. But there's, based upon what was shared today, there would be no reason for me to not continue to want to follow the existing schedule for the month of September. And that for Hillside to go back and to consider how to what recommendations they have or plan that they have to return kindergarten, or whichever group of students you think would be best served by being in every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. I think before we discuss further the calendar and the prioritization, the one mentioning of contact tracing and the safety protocols regarding, a sick person on campus and the protocols related to that. A board member had suggested that that a scenarios type of document, a sort of cheat sheet or a visual or a flow chart could be created from those pages that are within our reopening document, the pages 18 to 22 thereabouts, so that it's not something that is vague to either community members, parents, or employees, because I think there's been confusion or not understanding that there are protocols in place.
Exactly, and so I will make sure that we reference those. And again, there is no sort of flow chart of what happens because it's all situational. It's all based upon, what happens in that particular setting and, who's involved. And so there isn't necessarily this sort of, if A happens, B happens, and then C. It's not that linear. It really is situational. But what we are certain about is the contact tracing procedures, the training that's obviously our nurses and our building leaders have been engaged in. We actually I think it was through Corsica, Johns Hopkins offers a contact tracing course, and I know that our administrators are looking into taking that. Our nurses have already, but that's really the starting point, and in every situation is different. Sure. Okay, sure. Thank you for checking, Sylvia. So, but we will reference that, and there's some information with regards to, again, once the parent completes the health screener, we started this week, so the faculty and staff here in the district have been using the health screener, and which is before any of us come to work. We check ourselves to see if we have any of those CDC symptoms for COVID. And with a yes answer, obviously we stay home and seek medical advice. And of course, if we don't, everything should flow smoothly in terms of coming to work. And so parents will also have that information. But I'll also make sure I point out those pieces that really drive, the fact that testing alone won't be the basis for whether you can come back into the building. There's some conditions.
Janine, I continue to get messages from people that they can't hear. They just hear Janine clicking. That's what I'm getting.
So apparently, yes, there are problems with the live streaming that's occurring. The meeting is being recorded. Patrick is recording the meeting. We're not required to
Got it.
live stream this. We were providing that as a benefit to the community as they become accustomed to us being live streamed. But we are present in the building with the exception of 3 trustees that are dialing in remotely. And the trustees that are dialing in remotely did want me to comment that they wanted to be present at this meeting but had other events that prevented them from being able to be here. So I apologize if folks can only hear right now and not see. We don't, the live streaming is just as a benefit to folks. And I'm sorry that that's not going as smoothly, but again, this is the first time we're attempting to do both recording and live streaming at the same time while being present.
Janine, I wonder, is it possible for you to just let people know that this is being recorded? I don't know that they were even able to hear you. Okay.
And perhaps also through the Facebook Live or the Facebook page for the district? Facebook Live is working. Okay. So. Okay. Okay. So, were there any additional questions from the board regarding the protocols for health safety within the buildings, as was suggested, and as Valerie mentioned, the partnership with the Westchester County County Department of Health and the further contact tracing? Were there any other comments right now about that?
And are we, Lauren, on essentially the first question?
Yes, we're on the first question.
Okay.
So Valerie has, as I can summarize, and if I've misspoken, Valerie, you can correct me, but Valerie, at this point, you're saying that you're recommending to the board that we stay with the current calendar as it states through October 2nd, with your suggestion that we prioritize Hillside to look at how they could begin bringing in students full-time, and that Hillside would be working on that through their administration to see what makes sense. Is that what you're
That is correct.
suggesting?
So, I mean, I have a couple questions about that particularly. I think we have to get really clear on dates. So for example, Amy, I don't know if you have, I think there's going to be people listening that are trying to find childcare and do all sorts of planning. So I think we're probably at a point where it's hard for us now to say we'll be looking at stuff. I think we have to give hard dates. So I don't know, Amy, if you've got anything to share on that, or when you think things may happen, or yeah,
Yes, please do come up.
Hi again. So the model that we at Hillside feel would be most productive for our students is the AM/PM model. As I shared before, there were obstacles with that model, and there are a few logistics that would need to be worked out. Number one would be busing. We have a survey ready to go to find out from families if they would be able to opt for other transportation. So in the guidance, it talks about encouraging families to either walk to school or drive a child to school as opposed to using the busing system. If we could reduce our busing system to one bus run, we would be able to make the AM/PM system work. So we have a survey that we'd like to send out. We could send it out with a quick turnaround time to find out if that's something that our community could do to be able to get all of our students back to Hillside for an AM/PM model.
So just walk through that. So if you sent that survey out, in the next couple days, and is there a metric, a number where you say, hey, we would need kind of 85% of the people to be in to make it worthwhile? Like, how do you think about that?
So there is, and Maureen has been a real partner with the transportation piece. So we have a certain number of children that are permitted to use the busing, and then we have a certain number of children that actually use the busing. So then we would have to figure out what the number would be, 4 buses with, students. I think, Maureen, you had said 2 in a seat. So 2 in a seat, what that would look like as far as how many students in total that would be. and then we would have to make sure that as a community we could work together to be able to get the number down to that number. So we would have one bus run. That would allow us to get enough children out of the school quickly enough to give the buildings and grounds team time to turn it around, clean the school, so that the second group could come in. The other piece that we've talked about is the child care. So Maureen's been in contact with some of the different child care organizations that have been supportive of our schools, and we can work with them to create a model where they could provide child care either in the morning or the afternoon. So for families that are struggling with having children home, that would be another possibility. So those are things that I think we could work on quickly and have out by early next week. And if we could get a quick turnaround time on that, we could have a decision, I think, certainly by later of next week.
So does it mean, Amy, you're, again, I know you have to go back and work with your faculty and staff, but based upon the calendar, would that be the week of the 21st that you anticipate, or the week of the 28th?
I think confidently the week of the 28th. I think ideally the week of the 21st. I'm not in the transportation department.
That's the big piece.
There's a lot of work that has
That's
to be
the
done with the
part, yeah.
transportation department, because they would also have to be able to work out their routes. So from our end, I think we could make it work, but I can't say for sure that we could have it all ready to go by the 21st, because we'd have to get all that information back from our community. So my recommendation would be that, definitely the 29th, that we could go AM, PM, but possibly the week before.
My question before we, and thank you, Maureen, I see you're ready to speak some about maybe some transportation and childcare. And but before we do that, if we could just get some clarity, because we heard you mentioned, and we also heard Dr. Henning Piedmont mention that the priority could potentially be kindergarten. Are you talking about AM, PM for K to 4, all of Hillside, or are you just talking about kindergarten?
So we know that we need our children back in. I think the first step would be to be able to get the AM/PM model for all. Kindergarten, like I said, is a different entity because the room size is larger and the class size is smaller. That being said, we also have many families that are feeling that a full day of kindergarten is a long day. So my recommendation at this time would be to keep the school consistent. That way everybody's on the same model, all teachers are on the same model. That also gives us a little bit of time in the middle of the day to be able to support teachers, because there still will be the virtual piece, which will be our special areas. So the model that our reentry team imagined, and this was back early in July, the model that our team imagined was students would come to school for one of two sessions, either the 8:30 to 11-ish session or the 12:30 to 3-ish session. We'd have to work out those times specifically contractually. And then the middle part of the day would be where the teachers took their prep and their lunch. And then the special areas would be live, virtually. So students that were in school in the morning would get their live special in the afternoon and have independent work in the afternoon, and then the vice versa would happen with the students that came to school in the afternoon. The morning children would get a live special in the morning and have independent work. So the independent work could be web-based tools, could be assignments that the teachers assigned as a result of the lessons that they've done in school, but that would get all of our children in, and it would give all of our children 2.5 hours of face time with the teacher. The other significant benefit is the idea that every teacher would have a reduced group of children in the classroom for the 2.5 hours, allowing us to really target each child's needs and individualize instruction.
Thank you, Amy.
I was just going to mention that the number of students taking the buses would have to be reduced to no more than like 200 children, and it would be 100 in the morning on 4 runs, somewhere in that neighborhood, and 100 in the afternoon. So currently our ridership is probably more closer to like 350 students who take the buses each day. So we would need that to drop about to half to allow for that model. And as Amy had said, the after-school programs are ready to go, and in speaking with them, they would also be interested in if we were in a half-day model, I think they would also there may be an opportunity to see whether that they could be allowed to, for parents that need that, leave the students in the building that would need that care. Currently, they're looking to implement their normal 5-day week after-school model, but they had actually asked me, based upon requests from parents, whether there would be flexibility in extending their programs at the school if needed. So that is an option.
And I think there was a model, Amy, you shared with me that a Long Island school district kind of basically work with the community to eliminate transportation as a barrier, and the parents agreed to bring their children rather than to use the school bus, which then allowed them to open more quickly. I don't know if you wanted to mention anything about that.
I think it was Comac, right, Amy? Yeah.
So I had reached out to a superintendent and district in Long Island who had done this model of trying to figure out the busing, because that's one of our big obstacles. And early in July, when this model came up, and the two obstacles were the cleaning and the busing, and that was the reason it wasn't a possibility for us, we moved on from the model. But now that the cleaning is a possibility, the busing is still an obstacle. And I had heard about this district in Long Island, Comac, that was able to work with the community to be able to make it happen. So what they did was they put out a survey, and I had emailed the leadership there, and they sent me the survey, so I have it to be able to model after. They sent me the survey, and basically what it said was we need, families to be able to help us to be able to get our children to school, and transportation is an obstacle. So families filled out the survey to say that, yes, I could get my own child to school or work with other families. A lot of families work together where, a parent would walk multiple children to school. And if they got the number low enough, they would be able to bring students back to school. And that's what they did, and the community was able to make that happen.
Thank you, Amy.
So it sounds as if the recommendation we're hearing is that there is an interest within Hillside to reach out to the community and see if reduced busing could make an AM/PM model work for K through 4, and that there are opportunities for childcare that have already begun discussing that with the district, so that if families that needed childcare provided in the time where their child is not in school, that would be something that could be coordinated. My question is, and particularly having participated in the reentry planning committee over the summer, it was aside from the busing and cleaning factor, there was a discussion about equity overall in the district, that we should be operating K through 12 with the same plan. And have you given any thought, or if any of the principals have already provided that or that are here want to speak to the idea that, or confirming the fact that Hillside could be operating differently from Farragut and the high school?
I think Lou referenced the different schools working differently.
I don't see a reason why we couldn't be able to treat each building differently. At the high school, we do not have any busing, so busing is not an issue. Childcare is not an issue for a high school student. To be honest, when the high school students are in school, and if an elementary school is not, many of our high school students act as childcare providers for their siblings. So the opposite is true. But I think our high school students could be home for a week or two or several weeks while Hillside tries to bring in, and at least tries to bring in, the little ones. So I don't see any reason why we need to be on the same system. Because, again, the high school has an advantage and a disadvantage. The high school has been doing remote learning, has been working with Google Classroom, has kind of been the leaders in that because we've been doing it for a long time, and students are independent, don't need a parent to sort of be on top of them all day. But we also have the students who are probably most likely asymptomatic carriers because they've been around and continue to be around and active in our community and outside of our communities. So that's the concern that the high school has. So we'd like to, my preference is a little different than Amy's when it comes to the high school. I'd like to go slower rather than faster at the high school, and I don't see why the high school needs to be the leader in this. Again, remote learning is not perfect. We agree. But I do believe that the high school is probably the last place the board should be worrying about at this point.
So I have a question for you, Lou. So I know there had been some conversation in the district-wide faculty and staff meeting about potentially reducing the 50% model even further. So we'll go into the hybrid model at 50% reduction. So is there any thinking that it should be lower than that?
Well, we talked about, because many of our classrooms at the high school are small. They're around 660 square feet. Many of the second floor and third floor classrooms that face School Street are our smaller classrooms. So even at the hybrid model, many of our classes, because many of you know, we cap our classes at 27, and many of our classes are at 27. Even at the 50%, 13 or 14 students and 13 or 14 desks in those rooms is tight. And you're not going to get 6 feet of social distancing. And Amy brought up the AM/PM model. I don't see how that could not work at the high school as well at some point if we needed to go down that route. Again, I haven't spoken to anybody about cleaning or disinfecting, but buses are not an issue. And we can work out a system where instruction can happen. We can also come up with a model where if we decided to go all in at some point, where all in could be the morning and students go home early, and the afternoon is project-based learning and remote learning, where students are not in the building a full 6 or 7 hours a day, but they're in maybe 3.5 hours as an initial start, and then the afternoon is project-based, depending on what they had in the morning. So there are different models that we haven't really presented, but talking to my faculty it's eye-opening because they bring up some valid points. And yes, we're all nervous, and yes, we have a little bit of anxiety, and sometimes that anxiety gets the best of us. But when the conversations are calm and collected, I think the information that comes out, there are some aha moments. I mean, what I'm talking about today is not something that I've come up with, but what faculty members have kind of suggested to me. And you kind of say, aha, you know what, that may work. And I was on the reopening plan committee, and we've talked about so many different things. But I think we know more on September 11th than we did on August 11th, and I think we'll know more on September 15th and October 1st, and I think we just can make better decisions. But I'm in agreement. I've never been an elementary school person, but I've had kids, and I could never imagine a 5-year-old or 4-year-old being on a computer all day and Zooming, and they need that structure. So my advice and my, as from the administrative unit, I think we need to focus on Hillside first. Maybe some of my high school parents may not agree with me, but I don't see the high school being the priority right now to open.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you.
Anything to add, Jennifer?
Hi. I completely understand and support the prioritization of Hillside. It breaks my heart hearing some of the stories about our elementary school students really struggling to be on the computer all those hours. And I agree. Hillside should be the priority. Let's focus on them, get them in safely, organized, and I think that goes back to one of the suggestions from the Farragut middle school teacher made at our Wednesday faculty meeting. Let's do this slow and calculating and thoughtful and address individual concerns and problems as they arise. I think that in the middle school, being the middle child here, that we would really like to explore other options and plans and come together and think about and brainstorm how we can do it and what would be our slow and thoughtful approach. If it was one grade if we did an AM and PM model with one grade for a week, we could address the needs of the building, the structures. We could look at, again, our concerns being the many transitions, how we could reduce that, and starting slow and thoughtfully with maybe our fifth graders and the rest of the building being remote. They really did a great job this week. We got a lot of positive feedback for engagement and all the web-based platforms they're doing with remote learning, so they're feeling comfortable and safe with that right now. And it would be great to come to the table as a group, as a reentry committee for FMS and explore other options together.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Did anyone on the board want to ask any further questions about this idea of Hillside moving forward as a priority to being in the buildings in an AM/PM model and supporting the idea of initiating that with a community survey regarding transportation?
Makes sense to me.
BOE members, sometimes we receive a lot of correspondence from the public, and I'm not sure how that is shared out or even filtered with our staff, our faculty, so that maybe sometimes the tenor of the correspondence I receive seems to be that they're sharing that with us, but that they're not necessarily having that filter back to their child's teacher to actually give a firsthand sense of what the child's experience is. And so I just wonder how we do a better job of making sure that people are kind of on the same page. And I don't know if that's something that's similarly been experienced from, but and this is from many people. I mean, it just so happened that yesterday I got many emails, all from kindergarten parents, but certainly that has been, the tenor of the emails have been across the board from whether or not they're parents of children who are middle schoolers. I would say primarily elementary school kids, because obviously kids don't have the same literacy experience, they don't have the same experience with technology, and I feel like, there's a gap that exists. I would almost characterize it as a chasm, honestly. I myself have children in each of the schools, so I can attest to, the challenges that I experience, but I do want it to be something that is, publicly broached here. There is a communication that needs to be happening so that we all are aware of these things, so that it's not just, it's not just in the arena of the superintendent or of the administrators or of the teachers or of the parents. This needs to be a much more cohesively and comprehensively, addressed topic. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I do think since we've all grappled with online learning since, the pandemic struck us in March, and I think another thing that is also true is that we are in a very different place from March. The infection rates are not what they were at that time. However, people don't flip a switch emotionally in terms of, this is my health, this is the well-being of the people that I love. This is something that we don't know because we're living through a pandemic. My husband also is a physician, so he has led teams in the ICU. So I know this as the first-hand spouse of a first responder, but I bring that in only to say that I understand the passion with which people write to us on every side of this topic. It's not something that we are immune to, and I just want to acknowledge that, because I think many times there is a frustration felt by people when they don't understand that, we are in fact processing all of your input. and we are weighing the varying options that are presented to us. We rely on a superintendent and an administrative team that we think is very strong and who has a better working knowledge of what's happening across the different schools in a way that we don't possess. That is not in any way to shirk or skulk away from what our responsibilities are. We take them very seriously, and we put in a lot of time that perhaps people don't understand because they only see us in these once every 2 week settings. There are so many meetings, there are so many documents we have to review. It goes on around the clock, and that's only us as board members. I can't even begin to talk about how much the administrators have done, how much the teachers have done, how much our staff has done. We need to look at this as a community and understand that we are supposed to be rowing in the same direction. And if I'm speaking with a little bit of passion, it's just because it's very deeply and sincerely felt. And I just needed to get that off my chest.
Thank you, Sylvia. I have to thank everyone who prepared the summaries of the faculty meetings, and for you, Valerie, and Melissa and Maureen, to come in prepared to discuss the direction you'd like to recommend going forward. I have to say that as an early childhood educator and former K and 1 teacher, that I really believe that the direction you're suggesting is an appropriate one. I can also say that, as a teacher in kindergarten and first grade, the places where I worked, one was such an under-resourced school that we had no technology in our classroom at all. We had computers that were donated by the Gates Foundation, but no hookup to the internet, so they were just useless pieces of plastic and glass and silicone in the back of the room. And another that was a very upscale, progressive, independent school that didn't allow technology in the classrooms. All of our materials were teacher-made. They were not allowed to be store-bought. So in both environments, I have not been an early childhood teacher that has used technology, and it is astounding what I've seen as a current parent of a kindergartner. It is astounding what I see our kindergarten and our specialist teachers do as they interact with my own son, who's a kindergartner. So I really want to acknowledge the support that our teachers have gotten professionally to be able to do what they're doing and to engage despite the incongruous circumstances of what young people need. And I think that from what I'm hearing of the board, that we would like to move forward with the recommendation that you're putting out.
That's great, and thank you for supporting us. And we'll, obviously have to make sure that we're working continuously in the fashion that was modeled here today as we look into the future beyond October 2nd, because that's right around the corner. And so those conversations will involve the same sort of tiered approach with the involvement of all of our faculty and staff. I'd also like to just focus on sort of the season that we're in. I mean, we're approaching flu season, and so there's already a name for when the flu meets COVID-19, flu cove. And I think that worries me significantly because there's a sort of crosswalk across the symptoms, so I think we just have to be prepared to be as nimble as possible with regards to what may happen. And I think to really convey that to our families, because we are going into we'll keep windows open as long as we can, but we're going into that season, as I think it was Jennifer who might have mentioned, the children with the book bags, the sneeze shield or sneeze guard, and all the other things that they carry, their Chromebook, that's a challenge to us. And I think, I think we will continue to talk about those things because those are realities in terms of the spaces that we're in, and we just have to keep in mind that we're not where we were in March. In March we were exiting that, we were exiting the flu, going into the spring. Now we're exiting the summer, going into the fall and into winter. So we just have to, sort of keep that in mind as another variable that will impact us.
So in terms of, I have two items before we conclude. Really, or how are we going to communicate out what we've been discussing today? I know some folks are accessing this meeting remotely, but in terms of the time frame specifically for Hillside parents, and also for the Farragut and high school parents to know that while we are making some adjustments to the current calendar for Hillside parents, there's some families that have children in more than one building. So, if they're hearing changes are happening in Hillside, they're going to want to know, well, why aren't they happening at Farragut, or why aren't they happening at high school, and will they happen then? So I think, how is that going to be communicated? And then, this idea, this very real idea of the fact that that last week ending on October 2nd remains uncertain, and when will we be talking again to lay out the land past October 2nd?
So certainly I can capture what decisions were made today in an update to the community. So it won't go with the health screening information, because that's pretty technical, but certainly in a separate communication just to convey the decision with regards to Hillside, and that we'll continue to use this model. And I'll reference that there'll be ongoing conversations, as we have always said, with regards to looking, reviewing new information, knowing that new information will always be arriving, and that's the basis. So all of these are sort of data-driven decisions, and we're committed to that as a process. But what we are doing is again looking at the experiences that our children and our families are having, thinking about the input from our educators who are knowledgeable and care and want to be in classrooms with children. But the reality is there's real worry and genuine authentic worry that we can't downplay or dismiss, even if we can comply with the technical parts of a plan. It's the the human part that is going to make or break the plan in a sense. And we have to, honor that and think about that and keep that at the forefront. So I think, as I had indicated in I think it's the August 19th update to the community, that we'll produce information, every week, to follow up. And I think that should be the sort of pathway forward. And as we learn new things, or as we make any kind of shift or pivot in the plan, that's when we can convey that. We might want to at some point, next week we have a superintendent's chat, so our administrators are present, so that process will continue to be in a venue for our community to come and to ask questions and express concerns, and have administrators present to actually address specific things to their schools. So that process will, certainly, I think, be a way in which we can keep our community informed. And we'll also have, I know the building leaders can, communicate with their families as well, and, whether that means it's their own form of a forum or whatever structure they'd like to have with their families. And some of them are already doing that, if they've had meetings, small meetings, whether it's class meetings, to explain certain things. We will certainly make sure that we continue to keep the lines of communication open. So that is what I'll continue to do. So I'll communicate what's happened today and today's update, and next week when there's new information, we'll share that as well. So that, unless there's some other component that needs to be added to this, I think we'll proceed with this, unless the board has any other thoughts.
Were there any additional thoughts? And I'm going to look also onto the folks that are with us remotely to see if they had any additional thoughts.
I had one thought. I found the sharing from the principals of your faculty meeting notes to be extremely helpful. You know, it's a lot of times in a normal environment, we don't get to hear that kind of stuff because so much that goes on is just procedural stuff. We get bubbled up to themes, but I think that this is such a different animal that we're dealing with. You know, the questions we got a lot from the community were, you know, point me to the policy for where and how the board versus the administration makes decisions in a situation like this. And of course, there is no policy for how a board makes decisions in a situation like this, because it crosses over this really strange place of kind of operational but policy stuff that you've never thought of as policy, because these policies are you know, not anything that comes out of a policy manual from NISBA or anything of that nature. So it has felt you know, somewhat uncomfortable as a board member to trying to be navigating what's our role in all of this. And I think as a result of that, different factions in the community have just gotten their heels dug in on their points of view and perspectives. And the hard thing for, I think for us, I'll speak for myself, but probably other board members, has been that, you know, you can see the angle, you can see everyone's angle. I mean, we can see everyone's point of view and perspective, and they all make sense. And everyone's looking out for themselves and also their families, and also thinking more broadly about your community and your schools. And you know, the hearing from you today as building leaders, I think, was very powerful. And to continue to do that, I think will be really helpful. You know, Amy, you reaching out to COMAC and coming up, you know, there's probably 1,000 different things you're all going to be doing, reaching out to friends, colleagues, coming up with different solutions. And I think it's really important to keep in mind that you may be having some conversations that the board or the administration or we're not thinking of, and you come across something that's a great idea. And I know there's people in our community that go, well, why didn't you think of that 8 weeks ago? Well, you know what, because we're all dealing with the same stuff live in real time. And so I think if we can constantly keep that up, we're not going to go as fast as some people want. We're going to go faster than some people want. But I think if we do it all together, and we really, you know, as Sylvia was mentioning, you know, think of it together as a collective, I think we're going to end up in a really good place. And Sylvia, I would like you to speak more like that at meetings from your heart. That is like great, you know, I really appreciate that. We hear a lot from board members, why did you say anything, you know? Well, we're just dealing with so many angles on these things, but, you know, I think we are saying some stuff, and we appreciate everyone in this room, everyone listening, and everyone at this tribunal up here, which feels a little too formal for me, but this is a sign of the time, so thank you.
No, thank you, and I'd like to thank the board for finding the time to listen to the feedback. And I would encourage the board to consider this once a month as a work session, so that we can, in fact, you know, have the administrators and our union leaders to bring forth their, you know, the feedback that they're hearing from their membership. I thought that this was very valuable, probably one of the most valuable venues we've been in. And as we move forward, I think it's going to be even more important, you know, to have this sort of, you know, transparent sharing of feedback from our entire faculty and staff. So I hope we do this each month.
Yes, we do have
regular board meeting, right?
Yes, we have a regular board meeting coming up next week, and I don't know if, does anyone else have any further comments? I wanted to say that, you know, we began this meeting by having the moment of silence for September 11th, which is a very impactful day for each of us in different ways. And I just, you know, what many in our country reflect on this day is the fact that New York and other areas of our country came together to persevere and to be strong and to do what's best. And you know, I think I feel as if we all brought that today, that we all brought in a sense of moving forward together for the students in our district. And I agree that not everyone is going to be pleased with the particulars and how that impacts their own schedules or their own logistics, and the pace may be too fast or too slow, as Doug said, depending on those particulars, but that everyone in discussion was really focused on doing this together for the best interest of our students and the safety and well-being of them and the faculty and staff as well. So
And I'd like
you.
to thank the Board of Education for all your time and dedication in responding not only to the community, and you're right, there are lots and lots and lots of email messages that you're processing. Some I see, but most I do, and I appreciate the time that you've been taking to respond, and thoughtfully and obviously with a sense of wanting to empathize with every parent who contacts you, and your dedication to allowing us to do the work that you've tasked us to do, and dealing with certainly some of the pressures you must feel as community members, that and the various stakeholders who I'm sure are reaching out to you to also make sure that their perspectives are represented. But you've behaved as a very I think efficient and professional and committed board. So thank you for all your time, and for all of those who are the board members who are here digitally, who have also been spending a tremendous amount of time trying to make sure that we get through this, and we continue to focus on educating all of our children well. So thank you.
Thank you. That'll conclude the work session for the Board of Education today, September 11th.